Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
There's up to about 1,050,000 of them. And she was asking me what sort of rhythm I had and stuff like this, just out of interest. And we noticed that I was actually doing the wrong mantra. This was not good news. This is not something I wanted to hear. And I of course went immediately into, well, I'll just do the right one faster and have no sleep and still try and finish on time. So I gave myself a very difficult evening. And the following morning I happened to be walking down the stairs and Rinpoche came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder, which is unusual, and said, "You're doing very well." And it was gone. I did the wrong mantra. I finished the wrong mantra. There was no difficulty about it. But out of that experience, started me thinking about this idea about getting it right and what's right and what's the essence of the embodied teachings if it isn't doing what is prescribed to be done, especially since the other people that had been through these similar retreats had particularly strong instruction about doing things in certain ways which I hadn't had. And one of the instructions was that during the sessions you do not ever get off the mat. Well, there is no way that I'm going to sit it's just not in my nature to sit for 4 hours. And, I didn't get this instruction, so I didn't do it. And it was appropriate for me. They tell stories of having to go and light the candles and keeping a foot on the mat and all sorts of, because the candles would go out or something, and because I knew nothing about any of this, so I'd sometimes stand up and walk around and do mantra and stand on my head and do mantra and all that sort of stuff. I had no idea that these instructions were actually the correct pointing out instructions for the retreat. But in fact, he was pleased, and he was the measurer of how well things were going. He was pleased in the way in which it happened for me. And since I'm a somatic therapist, and since there's a group of us who are somatic therapists, both in Australia, in Germany, and here, who have worked together over 10 or 15 years, and many of us are Buddhists, we are very interested in this phenomenon of translating the help that is being offered to us by our embodied teachers into a way that helps us help others. And it became increasingly clear that having dogmatic, strict rules and regulations about how things are is sometimes useful and sometimes not. And how do we translate that into somatic work? So we started to look at what was happening with our clients when we gave them exercises or worked with them. One of the things that we noticed pretty consistently, depending on the subculture of Western culture that we were working with, is the degree of effort and need to get it right that the Westerner brings to the practice, and how much strain they put on the organism in our particular way of having to get it right. To some extent, it often causes obstruction itself rather than liberates. And so we have been working over a period of time to try and work with the primary issue of moving things along and keeping them contained and keeping them pointed and stopping the moving out of the charges, but at the same time not constricting and holding them so tightly in an effort to get it absolutely right that we destroy the progress and create more and more difficulty. It's a difficult thing to do for us because we're not easy folks. We're not easy in our everyday lives. We don't have an easy lifestyle. We expect difficulty and we embody difficulty. And we make our bodies such that we are already in this difficulty. And when we come to the practice, we come already with this attitude. And most of us take this attitude into the practice itself. So then we take that push into the practice. And that can be destructive to the organism and not supportive of the whole event of the Buddha, making the Buddha body, if you like. So we've been looking at what sort of exercises help, how does one go about supporting this, at the same time as trying to not just reinforce hedonistic principles, because you understand that's the other side of this problem. If you spend a particularly tight and difficult lifetime, or most life space really tight and difficult, then the psychology goes something like, I am owed now the free and happies, the very much betters, and the cruise and the everything. That's my right. We're not wanting directly to say, well, yes, let's all go on a cruise together and you'll get enlightened while you're on a cruise. That's probably not going to happen, especially if it's based in the compensation. So how to modulate between these two extremes so that the process, the native process, which is internal in terms of the arising of your own nature, is supported by the organism. And as the obstacles arise, that there's a way for us to deal or help the dissolving of the obstacles or moving of the obstacles in such a way that we continue with the process. Now, what I'm saying now is that the process is more primary than the organism itself and then the body itself. We also recognise as somatic therapists, if you don't realise that you're in relationship to your body during this process, then things are going to get very out of kilter and you're going to have trouble. And the sorts of things that people have trouble with is things like concentration, dull minds, sick bodies. Those sorts of things become such an obsession to us that it is difficult for us to pay attention to the actual native process. So we are trying to set up circumstances or paradigms where the body gets well, better, easier, and it has more tolerance for the incredible internal change process that's going on as one moves to wake up. It's very hard on the body because the body doesn't want to do that. The body's basic issue is about making an I, and an I has preferences, and an I really knows what's going on, and an I says this is what's right and this is what's wrong. The nature that is arising within us is different than that, and isn't defining things in those terms. So there's a natural argument between the two. How to make that argument as easy and give it as much space as we can is one of the things that we're interested in doing. Okay, so there's the intro. You want to do something? So if what I'm talking about, I mean, how we do it?
Could you define the word somatic?
Somatic means body, means to do with this stuff, insides, outside.
And could you also say what you talked about people being embodied and disembodied?
Right. Oh, my teacher died.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, but he may be back. Okay. There's hints that he is, but I don't know. Yeah, he died about 4 years ago.
Yeah, just ask you a quick question. What did be accomplished by doing those mantras in that room for 18 hours a day for 3 months? What was the...
Why did I do it?
Yeah,
I did it because the boss said, basically. Because I'm pretty... I mean, he's my boss and he knows about this stuff and I don't at that stage. What was accomplished out of it? What did I experience was accomplished out of it? I'm a somaticist, so I'll talk in somatic. My experiences is that I was heavy and dull And it was a real struggle for me to maintain any relationship or any thought pattern or any meditation over a period of time that didn't make me feel heavier, dull, tired, exhausted, like I was walking through mud all the time. And this is my experience of my life. I mean, it comes from very early and it just goes and goes and goes from me. At the end of that period, that had gone and has not returned in 6 years or so. A couple of skin cancers fell off. I had really weird dreams. I've felt incredibly sexual and enlivened by my sexuality. And the official, it was a Vajrapani retreat, and the Sakyas do that as an introduction into their major lineage work. And what he told me is to basically burn off old karma. But I didn't know what karma meant, so it didn't help me very much to hear that. I have more sense of it now, having the experience of how I used to be versus how I am now. I feel freer in my organism, more able to speak, stay in contact with folks, not so heavy. I don't tire in the same way. I'm not fighting against myself in the same way. I had a sense of real dullness in my body that isn't true anymore. The other folks who did it had different experiences. So there's general agreement that we're going to try and do something? Well, let's do it. Okay. You know that in most of the Buddhist traditions, backs seem to be pretty important. They're sitting around and all that. And it's hard, for many of us it's very hard work. For me it's particularly hard work. You notice I did not put myself in the situation of having sat and then sitting here because it's not my style, and it creates in me an argument that will last for a day or so. So I don't do that so often, but I do understand that backs are very important in the process. And for some people, you know, they just have backs that won't stand, even sitting for a small period of time. So maybe we could do something starting with a little bit in the backs. If you are willing to find a partner to work with, do that. If not, you can do this by yourself. And what we're going to do is just line up back to back and come into each other. Just find out what it's like to have a sense of back with each other. If you want to do it sitting, do it sitting. If you prefer to do it standing, negotiate that with somebody. If you want to do it lying down, that's okay as well. You'll notice that I give these instructions because I'm very aware that bodies are different, and for some people it'll only just create a stress to have to sit with someone else or to be with somebody else, and we're not interested in that. Now, in the yoga traditions, if you were doing something like this, one of the rules would be that you do not make any sound. Okay? What we have discovered that sound is really an important part of what is going on. So what I suggest that you do is that as you move towards each other's backs, as you breathe out, that you make a sound. Any sound. And if you dare have pleasure, that you let yourself express that. If you have pain, that's easier, you can express that. Anyone can do that. And if you want to have an experience of actually, if you're doing this by yourself and you want to have an experience of having a back support, then one of the things that you can do, and you may do this after you've done this for a little while, is to lay down on the floor and let the floor be the other person, if you like, and let your back come down with the out-breath to kiss the floor. You're asking your spine to kiss the floor. If you're sitting against each other or standing against each other, you let as close as you can to get your butts together. You know, butts is where the juice is. Yeah, we should know this, shouldn't we? Butts is where the juice is. Okay. And then once you've got the juices flowing, then you touch each other where you can. And of course, you have to understand that there is nobody here that would be interested in having this also included in their brain. You couldn't let your heads touch, because that would mean that you're actually noticing what's going on. So if there's a way for you to touch, to melt into each other and then melt out again with your breath to the point where heads can touch a little. Sound is okay to make, and it's encouraged. Now I'm going to ask you to spend a little moment noticing what happens when you make the sound to the experience. Sound is vibration. And if you can make a sound, you vibrate the organism. If you vibrate the organism, you tend to change pattern, because it's a little bit like sifting sand. You're moving the sands around. So we find that sound is a very important part of what's going on. Okay, now we're going to take that experience and respectfully and gently move away from your partner, allowing yourself to notice what happens to the point of contact of your spine as you move apart from each other. Now, while you are noticing things, you can still make noise. I know this is against the rules. You either pay attention or you make noise. In this one, you can do both. You can make noise as you move apart, and you continue to make noise by yourself if you're willing. So now, with the awareness of your spine, and with the possibility that it may be better for you to stand up and walk around, it may be better for you to lay down, it may be better for you to stay in reasonable close contact with the person who you're working with, it may be better for you to take separation. Whatever is true, follow those impulses. But while you're doing that, I'm going to ask you now to make particular sounds, just as practice. First sound I'm going to suggest is you make the sound Om. Let the sound move to those points in your back where you had contact, or where you had pleasure, where you were noticing. Let the sound come to your spine. The sound will change itself as you do that. That's perfectly okay. Next sound, Ah. H-U-N-G, Hong, 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 Hong. Now you get to choose which one you like. Om, Ah, Hong, just play with them as you like. No sound is okay, a little bit sound is okay, more sound is okay. Last from 5 to 7 minutes. They are different sorts of sleeping than any other sleeping. They do require a very short period of time, and you just lay down and have a nap on the side, on the back, or sit up and have a nap. And what you're looking for is that sensation of dropping down that happens as you fall to sleep. Do it on your back, on your side, whatever you like. While you're napping, you don't even need to hear what I'm saying, and if you do, that's okay. One of the things which my teacher and the Vajrayana Buddhists are very interested in is the combination of the new sciences, the neurosciences, and the other sciences which are telling us about how the body works. It turns out that it's very amazing that the new information from science, and neuroscience in particular, parallels very strongly the old Eastern philosophies, especially the yogas and tantric yogas. And the correlation is striking. There are some slight differences. One of the things that's become pretty clear is this experience of actually napping after a time of some change inside the organism helps reset the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, the nervous systems which decide at what level of on we need to be. And if you practice these naps when there's change happening, you take the experience of the change and allow it to go into the deepest places and reorganize the organism to run the simplest and most effective way. And every time we have an attitude or a belief system which is contrary to the nature of how things actually are, we are making the organism work in a non-efficient way. This napping that we are currently doing is to help us reorganize our organisms so that they work in a way beyond our awareness, below our awareness, below our thinking, and support us being the easiest and the most in tune what is natural in the universe. napping isn't really sleeping. And when you've had enough of napping, and one of the best ways to wake up from a nap is in a way that allows the organism to experience pleasure. Most commonly that means stretching sensuously, making a sound. And if you can actually allow yourself to yawn as you stretch, you open many diaphragms in the body, and you'll do yourself a favour. Yawning is excellent practice for the body. Yawn whenever you can, as often as you can. So that's the sort of stuff we do. Does anyone want to talk about what it's like? If not, we can either do some more or something else, or talk about this, or talk about the issues in general, whatever fits.
You have a teacher now.
An embodied teacher? Yeah, I do. He is the Holiness Richardson, who will be here, I think, later this year. But I have to say that I went through a process of panic searching for a teacher when my teacher died. He was 42 when he died. And I went through this immense process and came out of it after being slapped around pretty strongly by a lot of teachers with recognition that I am not out of relationship with my unembodied teacher. So I do have embodied teachers, but I have a very strong relationship to my I guess, root teacher or whatever.
Yes. A follow-up question to that. And what does your teacher think of your work?
He has told me to do it. In fact, both teachers have told me to do it. He actually, my original teacher was Jose Rinpoche, and he was sort of skeptical because, the Tibetans are a little like, don't enforce the body stuff. Don't get too involved in the body stuff. And he was a lot of therapy. What's therapy? And I was like, it's been my whole life. You can't tell me to stop being a therapist. But he became incredibly supportive at certain places. And after that retreat, for example, actually during the retreat and after retreat, I had to teach a week-long workshop afterwards. And I went to him with what I was going to teach. And he was very clear that that was an appropriate thing for me to be doing with other beings. And he wasn't often clear like that. When he said, yes, go and do it, it will be of great benefit, or be of some benefit, he wouldn't say great anything. That's a pretty good stamp from him. And the Holiness of Drukchen has been absolutely adamant about me teaching this stuff. So, and I've been resistant. I haven't actually wanted to, because it wasn't well enough formed in myself, and I had this thing about I don't want to reinforce patterns which ultimately are going to be obstacles.
Can you talk about, in your relationship with the teacher, where the teacher has such tremendous authority over the people he's in a relationship with? At least the way I hear.
Yes. Age-old
this is an old
guru worship stuff, yeah.
But well, beyond that, I mean, is there a point where, do you feel there's a point where a devotee's discrimination is a valid thing, where if something doesn't feel right, or that you don't just not go with that feeling and do it anyway, but you step in and examine it?
Well, I'm not here to make a general statement on those sorts of things because basically I'm not that level of Buddhist. I don't read enough, I don't know enough of the politics and all that sort of stuff. What I can say in my personal relationship with my teacher who loved me and I loved him, that there were moments when I would have done anything he suggested for me to do, but most of the time I resisted everything he said. But that's how I am in relationship. That's the sort of person I am. I'm an incredibly discriminating person, and it takes me a long time to decide that I'm going to go along with anything. And this, for example, this retreat idea was 3 years in the making, with him saying early in the piece, well, perhaps you should do a retreat, and me saying, what for? I don't want to lock myself in a room for 3 months and do mantra. It sounds disgusting to me. It sounds really bad. And it was a real process of working with him, and being very gentle and but at the same time, finally coming to the place where I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because, this is so aberrant to my experience of what humans are. I'm heavily into having people around and spending time with them and all that sort of stuff. So different. But it wasn't just him, it was that once that started to happen, then the universe, my relationships in the universe around me started to echo his voice in some way. And it became a process of saying, okay, all right, I'll do it. I'll do it badly, I'll do it, I'll try it, But, I'm not one that jumps in when the teacher says to do something. I know that the texts say that when your guru says something, then it's absolute. Well, that's no help to me, because that's not how I work. I don't just jump around like that. And my teacher was in retrospect, was incredibly patient with me when I thought he was being pushy. Now, when I look back, I think, how did he ever put up with that shit? So it's out of that has gotten me to the place to recognise how wonderful that relationship was in the embodied state and how wonderful it is now. But it was a process. It wasn't something that just went, oh yeah, whatever you say, boss, I'll do. Mm-hmm. I say it like that now, but I certainly wasn't like that then.
Mm-hmm. This has been a good reminder for me. I'm in a period, I go through lots of them, one now where it's very hard to meditate, restless mind. And I've learned in the past that there are things you can do, yoga, rebirthing, breathing, chanting, walking, meditating. There are all kinds of supports you can use. And then if I do some of these first and then sit, then the mind is less restless and I can be in the moment. So it was a good reminder. I feel very good right now. Yeah. And it's kind of a lower, I'm vibrating at a lower rate. Whereas when I was getting here, I was heavily into angry driver's mind. And now I'm not. It's helpful.
One of the things that was very helpful for me with my teacher and my experience, I guess, with my teachers was a recognition of what they were suggesting are things that they are saying has helped other people in the past and they have a history that are helpful. Not something that they think I should do or that is good for me or that I should get right. I went to university and I studied for a lot and I learnt what you're supposed to do to be able to pass exams. I learnt to minimise it and do the best at whatever it was. To be good enough to pass, well, there's no exam here and this is about things that could help. It's not about things of how you're supposed to be. The things that can help is being awake and enlightened, and that's already available to me when the moment I choose, the moment I am that is available to me. And these things are about someone lovingly offering me a hand, not about a boss telling me what I'm supposed to be. It's more like, well, give this one a try. And I saw a lot I've seen a lot in my teachers, them say things which sound so self-defeating. I remember one of my teachers saying, well, I'm not a Buddhist anymore, to a student. which was the most astounding thing I ever heard. You know, 'cause this student was heavily into being a Buddhist and had read much Buddhism and could quote it very well. And he just gently said, well, I've given up being a Buddhist. And the shock and horror on the man's face, but also the liberation that came with that. So, you know, that there's this sense of trying to help rather than trying to make somebody something or be there. And that's what we're trying to embody in this work too, as best we can. Because we get into a situation, I get into a situation where I won't do what is good for me because I won't be controlled by it. You know, I won't feel better. I won't do what makes me feel better because I'm busy feeling bad, and that's what I'm doing. And the way around that is not the issue of control, but the sense of love and compassion that somebody wants to help or something wants to help. That's what melts it for me. That's what makes the difference.
Are you teaching now?
Am I teaching now? No, I'm working in a county mental health institution for the very, very sick and quite nervous. And there's not... I teach a little bit psychotherapy. I'm about to go to Australia for 3 months, and I will teach a little over there, which is where I do most of my teaching. When I come back, I'm hoping with some support to start offering this teaching, if there's enough interest. Maybe start with some small group and see what we can do with it and how we can formalise it. And if people want to do it, if they find it useful, then maybe we can start doing some of this.
You're in the Bay Area?
I live in San Francisco, corner of Castro Market, right there where it's all at. Yeah.
When you're seeking for a teacher out of your own desire, and do you find yourself that resent or rejecting certain teaching that teacher gives to you, and simply you just don't want to?
Yeah, I do. I find myself doing that all the time.
Why is that?
Because I'm an opinionated asshole, basically. Well, that's the kind way of saying it, I suppose. If we're going to do it more somatically, if I was to speak from a somatic point of view, it's basically because I can't embody it, I can't take it. I can't have it, for whatever reason, whether it's be psychological, whether there not be enough room in my current occupied space or whatever. I just can't do it. And what I have found is that a lot of the teachings take a long time to come to fruition. I can't have them right now, but as I develop in this process, then I can feel the influence of the teaching, and then from the influence I can then start to become some element of that teaching. But it's a process, and often it's the first process is a challenge, which I say, no way, I'm not interested, go away, I don't want to do it.
But you're the one who wants to.
Oh, I know, I understand, I'm the one who wants to, but I'm also the one who's saying, no, I won't. And we all, because, we're so dumb. We are so unable to recognise what we measure everything that is happening from here. And it's being offered from there. And the word that is being said there is not the same as the word that we are envisaging here. And it's a real shock to us when we find out, for example, that love is not lust. That love is a very big phenomenon, and it goes on and on and on, and will destroy structure after structure after structure. When we find that out, when we start off with our thought is, love is him, and him is mine. Try that with a teacher. Oh, God. I did. I tried it. No, you can't do that, You can't define love. I mean, I really tried to define love in those ways, But, slowly I start to wake up. Slowly I notice it isn't what I think I want, what I've decided is right for me. Turns out that that's not the issue, what I think I want or what is right for me. It turns out that the issue is the challenge of the embodied teacher or the embodied reality is an opportunity for me to expand past where I can even know yet. And I object to that. Because I say, I know it all, I know what's going on, I'm in charge, I want what I want to keep I going the way I want I to go. And over there they're saying, that's all nonsense. That's all going to melt away. And I'll agree with that because I still want what I want. But I'm not actually agreeing with it. It's a terribly difficult process to have all that melt away. So again, back into the somatic arena, what we're trying to do is to make the body subtle enough, able enough to withstand the stresses of those enormous changes that go on as you update and update and update in your relationship to the Buddhist reality. It's a huge thing.
I think my question, I sort of try to ask a question to get the answer to myself.
Yeah.
I think I don't feel myself when I go to a certain teacher. I think in this case, I'm mainly talking about Tai Chi that I've been practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me when I desire, I want to learn from this teacher, somehow I could obey, even think what he wants me to do, even I don't understand why he wants me to do this movement, this stretching. But soon later, I don't like it, I don't know, but I follow it. But then soon enough I found out why. But now into my own experience that people come to me, want to learn from me, free of charge, but yet they want me to teach them the way they want me to teach. And I can handle that. I can figure out how to handle that. That's why I asked you a question.
Yes. Well, what I do with circumstances like that is I say to myself, this must have been what it's like for my teacher. This is what I must have been like when I presented myself to my teacher. This is what I was doing to him. Look, buddy, I want you to be the sort of Buddhist that I think you should be so that I can get on being a Buddhist, Mm-hmm. Now, I was doing this to my teacher. How did he handle it? What did he do? And I go back and think about how he held me in my crazy attitudinal system and stayed with me, not supporting it, but not breaking the relationship. How did he do that? And I go back again, and I'm often swept with great compassion for these folks. How boring it must be for them to have so many people come and tell them how they're supposed to be. It must be incredibly annoying. And how do they do it, And that gives me support. That really helps me. It really helps me to know that they're doing that. They're doing that, and if they can do it, then I do a little bit of it. Maybe I'm not going to do it as well as them, but yeah, okay, I'm going to give it a go. Now, I do have limits, and I recognise my limits, and sometimes I have to say, I can't be what you want me to be. I'm really sorry. I really wish the best for you, but I simply can't be what you want me to be. And, ultimately you're going to have to accept that, or we can't play this game any longer. As a shrink, that's something that you learn to do pretty early in shrinkdom. So it's a default system that I can go back to pretty easily. But most often, the first question I go is, how does any being put up with relationship that requires us to be what you're suggesting? And I use my experience of my teachers and how they've been with other people to help me.
I heard you mention about the autonomic nervous system, and then we're talking about the conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be a lot of interest in the amygdala, the emotional brain, the one that you're now talking about,
Sure.
that I can cognitively want to change, but emotionally I want to do what it is that you say. I want to be who it is that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering whether or not you've done any studies into the amygdala or the emotional brain.
Well, I'm very interested in not just the amygdala, but the hippocampus and the whole. The amygdala is really more, I think, the rageful brain even than the general emotional brain. There's a lot of front-forward projections of the amygdala into the limbic system. And then, so we're very interested in that because, people come to therapists because they feel bad emotionally. That's why they come. So at one level, that's what we've all been dealing with all these years, is problems about feeling bad emotionally. And so I am interested in that, and I'm interested in how that changes. But I'm also interested in how that's a reflection of what's happening in the physiological system itself. And in particular, things like how you set your body temperature, how you set your body clock, how you set your sleep-wake cycle, how you set your breathing cycle, and all that sort of stuff. It's so incredibly interdigitated that if you just take the emotional brain per se and don't go back into those connections, then you're not going to get the best benefit. You may get a person who has some level of classic therapy. That is, they're able to feel less emotionally torn by particular situations. But that's not necessarily going to help them wake up. That's going to let them handle this samsara better. And that's not a bad thing. It's not bad that people learn to handle samsara better. And when I'm doing just therapy, which I tend not to do quite so much of these days, that's the goal that I'm doing with somebody. They come in with a problem. The problem's emotional and attitudinal, and we work to change that. And sometimes we work directly in those sorts of parts of the brains which are emotionally based, and using some of the, maybe even some of the direct hands-on sort of issues to try and help the amygdala not be so red hot. Or maybe we're going to use some medicines to help them, or maybe we're going to do some talk therapy that will help them, or maybe we'll do some expressive therapy that will help them. And at the end they'll come out and they won't get so tripped up in those circumstances so often in the world. And that's a good thing. That's therapy. What we're talking about here, and that's a bit like changing the way the branches of a tree work. What we're doing here is working on the roots of the tree. Okay. Now, not everybody wants to work on the roots of the tree or are interested in working on the roots of the tree. But for those that are, then we're trying to use techniques that will pick up all the parts, if you like, because we're working at the root level. But if this person only wants to work on the emotional pieces, then we'll do that. But that's therapy and not so much what this work is about. Okay.
Thank you very much. When you come back and want to do this work, I hope you'll let us know.
Sure. We can do this again if you like. Some version.
Thank you very much.
Before we stop, are there any announcements?
Make the noise whenever you like. It's not a bad thing to make a noise. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.